In this video from the 11th of March 2022, filmed in the vicinity of Kiev, we can see what I think is an NLAWS anti-armour weapon ambushing a Russian column. NLAWS stands for Next Generation Light Anti-Tank Weapons System. However, so everyone can understand, let's be really unprofessional and call it a bazooka type weapon. When I was in the army, the word bazooka was used half with tongue-in-cheek. The NLAWS has the benefit over the javelin in as much as it costs around $30,000 for one unit, which compares very favourably to the javelin at around $200,000. Of course, it's being used to knock out a tank, which could cost potentially 100 times as much. And so therefore it is a very effective use of resources. These weapons go back to World War II, when bazooka entered the vernacular and was used for anti-armour and for assaulting buildings, pillboxes and other fortified type obstacles. At the same time, Nazi Germany developed the Panzerfaust, and whole battalions of Volkssturm, the Home Guard, were equipped with this type of weapon. The Panzerfaust was effective at close range against tanks, but not much good against infantry. And here one may see one of the early disadvantages of this type of weapon. Curiously enough, the Panzerfaust III, a weapon developed in the 1970s and discontinued in the mid-1980s, is now being supplied to Ukraine from German army stocks, and I might even do a little video on that if anybody is interested. The most impressive use, if I can use the word impressive, of course, for something like this, was during the Fourth Arab-Israeli War, the Yom Kippur War, as it's often called, in October 1973. Then the Egyptian army crossed the Suez Canal, advanced a short way, and waited for the Israeli tanks to counterattack. They did, as was Israeli military doctrine, and they were resoundingly defeated by a barrage of anti-tank missiles carried largely by infantry. One could have assumed that this would have been the end of tanks, as the machine gun, trench and artillery was thought to put an end to the rapid wars of movement in World War I. However, as in World War I, there were ways around the use of the machine gun, trench and artillery, and only 25 years later, wars of movement returned. However, I need to point out one thing that was thought at the time, is that the Suez front was comparatively small, and in Europe, in the event of an attack by the Soviet Union, there would never have been such a concentration of anti-tank force as there was in the Sinai in 1973. And there was a way around this problem. Then the Israelis were able to resume the offensive by combined arms, that's to say using different weapon systems and parts of the armed forces to knock out Egyptian positions. In that case, it was knocking out the SAM anti-aircraft missile bases, many of which were on the western side of the Suez Canal. This in turn allowed the Israeli Air Force, which had been hounded by these anti-aircraft missiles, to engage ground targets, which when neutralized allowed the tanks to become mobile again. And I know there are people who think that Egypt won the Fourth Arab-Israeli War. I would say no, okay, it was a major Israeli victory. But that is a subject for another time. Maybe Egypt did win the war because it made Israel think that, or realize that it couldn't continue like this, and really helped push the peace process. Anyway, another time. In this video, which I'm slowing down now deliberately, we can see one of the problems of the bazooka type of weapon. There's a backblast and smoke and identifies the location of the shooter. In the case that infantry and helicopter support had been with the tanks, then this would have been very dangerous for the man with the bazooka type weapon. As it happens, in this case that we have here, this example, and there's several videos of this type which are now coming from Ukraine, there are further opportunities for ambush as the tanks flee off the road and into a ploughed field, where more ambushers could potentially be waiting, particularly as it's now known how the Russians advance. The Russians are advancing down roads, and therefore, once they're forced off the road at given points, all sorts of things could happen. In any case, what this does, it shows the complete failure of Russian combined arms, which I think could lead to a stalemate situation where Putin's forces stop advancing and wait for Ukrainian counterattacks to force them off their territory. And clearly, when it comes to Ukrainian counterattacks, they are then going to face the same type of problems that the Russians have now. Furthermore, a liberation of all of Ukraine will be quite difficult. I mean, to get into the Crimea, which is easily protected, and that can easily be fortified. So I do see problems there. In the meanwhile, as Ukraine, to be quite honest, doesn't have any way of countering the terror attacks on the civilian population by the use of long-range artillery and cruise missiles, then we are likely to see that the Russians are just going to keep hitting the poor civilians, and for them things are going to get a lot worse. At the end of the day, it's a horrible thing to think, but for Russians, it's much easier to hit unarmed civilians than Ukrainian soldiers who are armed with portable anti-tank weapons. In my opinion, and again, this is a subject for another video, which we can maybe then develop further, but this is absolutely the reason why Ukraine needs to be supplied with aircraft. The MiGs from Poland, which Ukrainian pilots know how to fly, would be extremely useful and may be able to be used to knock out the cruise missiles and the artillery. So therefore, I believe that these weapons ought to be given. And as for those who think that this will lead to World War III, well, I'd point out the following. If Russia, with an army 9 times bigger than that of Ukraine's, can't beat Ukraine, it's not going to start attacking other countries, in my opinion. And point 2 is this, is when the Soviet Union was supplying all sorts of weapons to North Korea and to North Vietnam, the United States didn't attack either China or the Soviet Union. And indeed, only 40 years ago, something I know a little bit more about is that when Peru started supplying Argentina with fighter aircraft during the Falklands War, the United Kingdom, a nuclear power, didn't obliterate Lima. So I think that is the way to go. Anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you found that of interest, and if you want to see more of my videos, I upload every Friday, minimum every Friday, but during the this Ukraine war, I am going to actually do more and more. Did I say Ukraine war? No, special military operation. There's no war, is there? Let's not forget that. This isn't a war, it's a special military operation. So once this is over, I will be going back to my normal stuff, which is based on the Second World Special Military Operation, mainly, and the Third Reich. So, thanks very much once more, and all the best from me.